good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Six Rings Kane Show on a new night, Monday night now, baby. We're really excited, actually, to have Eric McLean on the show here, college football analyst, co-host of the Huddle. Coach, yes! All right!
First touchdown of the year.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy. Ha ha. It's a six-ring Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vish, and DJ break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. Real Portland live from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the six-ring champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards, a hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the Six Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
Buenas tardes.
Noches, right? I mean, it's freaking 9 o'clock.
Buenas noches. We got some, it wasn't so much the cardiac Canes this time, but the heartbreak Canes.
Yeah, that. We thought we would be previewing a super regional right now, or at the light at the very least.
Right, exactly, or at the light, potentially getting there. But here we are. Texas advances out of the Coral Gables Regional, not the University of Miami who hosted it. And for what feels like the 20th year in a row, it's really only the second year in a row that this happens. Obviously, we know the history before that, but second year in a row that Miami is the host and drops the regionals, and they are officially out of the NCAA tournament. So. There's quite a bit to dissect, and we could be here for 2 or 3 hours doing it. And
I can call Melissa in if you want to do that, but I don't think we need to.
No, but we're not going to do that.
Oh my God! Seriously, have you looked at the chat?
No.
This was after I said that.
Oh Jesus! There she is. There she is.
Shared 2 to 3 hours and immediately popped in. Like that's her gig. What are we doing here?
Yeah. So, but. Look, I mean, this is a tough one. This is a tough one to swallow, man. It's tough, but what is Fernie putting there?
I don't know. I think he maybe tried to do an emoji and it didn't take.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
I don't know. What's up, Tap?
What's up, man?
So they played in the best.
I'm not gonna even answer that. Yeah.
All right. I'll just beat up on a pansy schedule. Like literally beat the number 1 team in the country last week, but whatever.
I'm not gonna even answer that. Sometimes, look, at the end of the day, man.
I mean, so we should probably unpack a little bit about what happened this weekend. We can also
some people just don't get it, Vish, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's worth. Talking a little bit about how we'll obviously get into like what happened over the weekend, but also probably worth being a little bit talking about the future and where we go from here. But I mean, we did preview and we're going to talk about some of Gino's decisions as well. But I think one of the things we were both very clear on is the reason we didn't want to play Texas is they had 2 top end pitchers,
right? And
the second one is the one we ran into, kicked our ass. I mean, and that's really what happened. I know we never want to give credit to the other team.
Right.
That dude, we were there, was throwing his 125th pitch, still hitting mid to high 90s. The hell? Like sometimes you run into that, right? And that was their second best pitcher. Their other pitcher was the Big 12 pitcher of the year. And the reason they were a 2 seed is actually we saw some of that, and we can talk about the game last night. But I mean, that guy who came in and started as their third starter, that guy was terrible.
Right.
And that's how you end up as a 2 seed when you have 2 top end starters. But we talked a lot about how we weren't built for regionals. They are, because they can run those 2 guys out there and then survive the rest of the weekend. And we scored 1 run and that put us into the losers bracket. And we kind of knew would have a very hard time playing out of the losers bracket without our pitching depth. So,
and I know that there's been, the running theme, which, there is some validity to it, that this team struggles against elite pitching. And the bottom line is everybody struggles against elite pitching. However, yes, I mean, in times like this, you get a team that, that kind of, got quiet again at the wrong time with their a little bit, not a lot, because they still scored, against the Maines and Louisiana and even 6 runs against Texas last night. It's still tough though, man. When you face elite pitching and you don't get the job done, then you're going to be knocked as a team that that can't hit elite pitching and they can't score runs and their bats, and they're whatever it is you want to say, whether they're overrated or whether, then you start to get all these things and you don't look at the body of work. You don't understand what this team, went through the whole year, and then, some of the knee-jerk reactions come out and you get upset and you get pissed off because we're in the same situation again where we got knocked out of the regionals being a host. And I get it. It is frustrating, but at the end of the day, I think we all, that's why I didn't want to comment on it too much last night, but you got to take a step back and kind of evaluate everything that happened. And your expectations really are something else that you kind of need to, sit back and also.
Yeah, and I just want to address this head on because it was certainly all over my Twitter mentions. Jazz logged in to Twitter for 10 seconds, texting me, been like, I'm out of here. Yeah. I hung in there a little bit. Melissa was in there arguing on my behalf as well. What I don't have the stomach for it as much as she does. But look, not only is Gino not getting fired, but I think that's a little bit dismissive because sometimes they won't do anything. He shouldn't be fired. And I'll flatly state that. And for everyone saying the same thing every year,
not opinion, but it's a fact.
No. I mean, but let's be realistic here. This is a top 10 program. We have flamed out in the regionals 2 years in a row at home, so there are things that need to be addressed. But no one is firing a coach off of a top 10 program. Again, 6 seed last year, 9 seed this year. No one's firing that. Like, what are we even talking about? And then saying, and then turning around and saying, well, if we fire him, it's going to fix what? Like, what is actually the solution here? Like, this is baseball, man. Stuff happens. Like, we've had bad teams make it to Omaha, and we've had good teams not make it there. That's what baseball is. So this team was better than some of the teams. We had a team that turns out had John Jay and Danny Valencia on it. That was like a 3 seed, went to Nebraska. Nebraska lost twice. We didn't have to play them. And then we made the NCAA tournament and even won a game there. And then, that team stunk the whole year. Like, the reality is, like, baseball's not meant to be played in a small sample size. And then it's the same thing happens in the majors. You get in the postseason and, like, all of a sudden, like, teams win 100+ games and then lose because that's baseball. It's just
anything can happen in a small sample size. You're going to get like the Oral Roberts of the world that that make it through. You're going to get the Ole Misses like last year, Mississippi State 2 years ago. You're going to get Vanderbilt gets knocked out. Florida's in a drag out match with Texas Tech right now to advance. I don't know if they won already or if they played or whatnot, but you got Indiana State come out of nowhere, and they're a host team, but we're talking about Indiana. I mean, baseball is a crazy game, man, and it's about who gets hot at the right time.
And it's also the way this format is a lot about luck. This is a good point, but Duke, they Coastal lost the opening game to what was it, Ryder or whatever the hell, and that just teed Duke up, and that's why we were saying like. And I know, look, we got to take care of our own business. We need to beat Texas on Saturday, and we would have been fine. But, that's why we were saying, if Louisiana beats Texas, we're going to walk this regional. Because they're going to have to use their second pitcher in the losers bracket game. We'll get Louisiana's second pitcher, who's not good, because then we had one good pitcher. And we would have been 2-0 like that, easily. Instead, we ran into one of the Big 12's best pitchers, and he shut us down. And there's reasons for that. Like, we should have capitalized in the first 2 innings when he was laboring a bit. Once he settled in, we had the bases loaded twice and didn't score in the first 2 innings. That's where you gotta take advantage, and that was a problem we had all year, and it blew up in our face. But sometimes you get lucky too. Like Duke got into the winners bracket, got 2 wins without having to play the best team in their region.
Yep.
That happens too. It's baseball. It's in this regional format. Your bracket opens up when there's an upset on the other side sometimes, and it didn't happen here.
I mean, look at one of the other brackets. You got Penn and what is it? Southern Miss playing.
Yeah. Auburn, because Auburn went 0-2 and out. Yeah,
that's gonna happen, man. Vanderbilt's not gonna fire their head coach,
right? And I think and Melissa called out a point too, and this is what ended up biting us. Like our pitching, we had a couple of key injuries in the preseason. We also had some injuries in season. Like we just didn't have it, and I totally there's definitely criticism to be had in terms of, and we'll talk about some of the way we target our recruiting. Spend a lot of time going after kids that we pretty much know are going to go straight to the pros, and so we have these really high rated recruiting classes and struggle to get them on campus.
Pulled up too, so I'll talk about.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a look at that too as we kind of talk about next year and how we do going forward.
Right.
But like the reason this team was hosting is because in the back half of the year when they won 6 series in a row, and no, not against weak competition, against elite ACC competition, it was Gallo and it was Lecarica stepping up because they struggle mid-year, struggle at the beginning of the year. They stepped up and they started pitching well, which is how we were able to survive Ligon being injured.
Right.
That's who got bombed for 9 runs in 1 inning last night. Like those are even when Gallo was struggling, we were obviously at the game. We were like, you got to bring Lecarica. And there was no even doubt. There wasn't a decision being made there. That's his ball. And he gave up another 6 runs. Like as a manager, like you got to go to that guy. There's no one else to go to there.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you still had Walters completely fresh, not bringing him in the 3rd inning. Like that was 100% Lecarica's moment that he had been successful in the entire back half of the season, and it didn't happen. And so, as a manager, like we can talk about whether or not you should have started Zeal on Friday or whatever.
Right.
You know what? You score 1 run against Texas in that second game. It doesn't matter who we started, right? And then, last night it was Gallo and then Lecarica and then Torres, and that was always going to be the plan, regardless of how the rest of that weekend had gone. And you know what? They got bombed, and it was a horrible inning, and it ended our season. And it sucks.
By the way, TBB, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
We're gonna walk through some of this.
And Melissa, about Levis.
Yeah. We're gonna kind of talk about some of them are borderline. Some of them, it depends. Another one that you didn't mention was Patelli, who we'll talk about as well.
No, TBB mentioned it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yo-Yo, Walt, CJ, Levinson, Rosario. Oh, Dom. There's Dom.
Yeah, and maybe Carlos. So I don't know if
Carlos. And that's another thing that happened, right? Like this actually started to happen a little bit in the ACC tournament, but we had this year had a good bit of production out of the bottom 3 in the lineup, and they just completely, again, started in the ACC tournament, just continued right through. Just 3 automatic outs essentially this weekend, and that hurt. And again, he shuffled the lineup in the last game, tried to get some other bats in there. It didn't work, but we were short. I mean, that's the reality of what happened there.
Vish, I just sent you over the commitment list so that we can.
Yeah, we'll pull that up in a second.
Well,
I guess let's kind of finish off the weekend a little bit here, and then we can definitely look ahead. But what did you? So we both said flat out like should start Peepo.
Yeah.
On Friday, he didn't do it. I would say for what he was trying to do there, he got what he wanted, which was Zeal only threw 80-something pitches. If we had gotten to Monday, he probably would have been an option there because he could have at least thrown an inning, which I totally forgot until after the fact. But his role last year was set up man, so I think they were thinking, he could do that. Melissa's making your point from last night. I might as well tee you up, but let's I want to talk a little bit about how we handle the pitching because then, I think Saturday went to Ligon, 2 innings, he got bombed, but then Rafe pulled up this all-worldly 7 shutout innings to keep us in the game.
The All 2018, huh?
Yeah.
Congratulations to him on that one.
It's unbelievable.
But just going back to Friday night, I think we spoke about this ad nauseum. And it was just, I think you got to go with people. You got to go with Rosario on Friday night. He's going to eat up some innings. Chances are Maine's not going to be able to catch up to him for at least, the twice around the order. At that point, you're at the 5th or 6th inning already. You still got an opportunity to bring in a guy. maybe likes Rafe, right? I mean, I know it worked out for Saturday, but you bring in a guy to eat up a couple innings, and then you shut the door on Maine and you move on. I think that by going to Zeal, it was it's a tough decision to make. I understand why he made it, right? Look, we've seen already in this tournament so many of the teams go out quickly, right? You saw Florida lose, you saw Vanderbilt, you saw Clemson lose, you saw all these big teams go down to a 4 seed, to a 3 seed. You got to throw your number one guy there, and I get that logic. I get that logic. Throw your number one guy and get that over with, and then kind of work through.
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on there in addition to what you said. The thing is, we had 4 starters, right?
Right.
Only 2 of them could actually eat innings because Ligon was never going to eat innings, and Gallo was a 3-inning guy. Period. Right. So it was Zeal or it was Rosario, because you're not going to start someone knowing you have to eat your bullpen on the first game. Absolutely. So he went with Zeal. I think the other thing, I mean, we can just say this out loud because it's true. He's not the actual ace. It's Ligon. And so this idea that you hold your ace back is some schools choose to do that, some don't. We actually normally do. We didn't have an ace, really. And I think he thought, and this was a mistake, Ligon will give me 4 or 5 innings that are better than what Zeal can give me. So I want him in Saturday. I think he did actually think he was saving his best pitcher.
Yeah, sure.
And then it didn't happen. He got shelled. But then Rafe came in and bailed it out. But Zeal was not like a low ERA. Like our ERAs were. I talked to everybody over the weekend. But yeah, I did an interview with Louisiana Radio last week, and they asked me if like our ERAs were legitimate because they were all high. And we're a regional seed, the number 9 overall team was like, yeah, no, our best starters ERA is like around 4.
Yeah.
Like that's the real. Like, I mean, so we didn't have an ace. We didn't have that shutdown guy all year. Even when Ligon was healthy, like he did it once against Florida State and got hurt that game. But like we were never that like, oh, this guy's going to come in and allow like go 6 or 7 innings and allow 1 or 2 runs. We didn't have that guy on the staff this year. There was no Palmquist. Right. And so the reality is he wasn't choosing to not hold back his ace as much as we don't really have one.
Right.
And he had to go with either Zeal or Rosario because no one else could eat the innings. And then you have to go to the bullpen, even if they're pitching well, which you don't want to do. So he went that route. Again, Rafe ended up bailing us out. Like, so sometimes you make bad decisions and get lucky, and he actually did. Because he would have taken 4 runs over 9 innings any day on Saturday.
Let's talk about Rafe and that performance on Saturday. What was it, Saturday night? Yeah, on Saturday night against Texas. I mean, we've spoken about him before, right? And a lot of the players asked, who the toughest kid to face on the staff was, and a lot of them said Rafe. And for reasons that we've spoken about, right? Arm slot, his angles, the way he throws, his delivery, his release point, yada, yada, yada. We've kind of gone through all of that already, so I'm not going to go over that again. But you see that it was very effective against a good hitting team, a good baseball team like Texas. You saw that Sheena, unbelievable. You saw you saw how he was able to, work hitters, right? And kind of dominate them for the better half of 7 innings. We're talking about 9 strikeouts for a kid, Rafe Schlesinger, who hasn't thrown more than 3 innings this year, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 innings, and a full 7 innings and struck out 9 Texas hitters and kept us in that game. We just couldn't put it together against LBJ, and that's, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your pitching staff does. If you can't hit, if you can't score more than one run,
it's not going to work. Certainly not with any of the pitchers on our staff, or none of them are going to do a complete game shutout or something. Like, what are we talking about? The other thing, so he struggled a lot of this year, and a lot of it was his control. So when he was hitting the zone, he's a high walk guy. That's why it's tough to put him into these challenging spots, because he walks himself into trouble. He didn't do that. And I think that's why. But towards the end of the year, he definitely was getting, like, he took Cintha's role, essentially. Yeah. And then, obviously, I don't think anyone, including Gino, thought when he puts him in the 3rd inning there, that he was just going to shut him out for 7 innings, and he wouldn't have to use anyone else. I mean,
we kept saying, all right, this is the last inning for Rafe. All right, this is the last inning for Rafe. This is the last inning for Rafe. He just kept coming out. He kept coming out. Yeah. Yeah,
She's completely stolen my bid at this point, but that's okay.
get it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you said, there was if that kid was gonna put that performance out there on the mound,
Right.
that was a loss. Like, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. There was no managing our way out of it. I unfortunately we had this problem all year, and we would slug our way back into games and get away with it. We didn't there, which was getting guys into scoring position, loading the bases, and getting unproductive outs. And this time we had those 2 chances to score in the first 2 innings, and we didn't bring anyone home. And if you do that, it changes the game around maybe, and maybe that guy gets chased early, right? I mean, you never like we were Levinson, I think, was up with 1 out with the bases loaded, and he popped it up. I mean, if he like rips one into the corner there or something, or even obviously over the fence would be even better. Like, maybe Texas to start get their bullpen up. This guy doesn't actually last, right? You can knock him out early. Instead, he's in there in the 9th inning throwing 95 past us. So, I mean, those are the ones, and that was a problem we had all year.
There's no. It's tough to say, right? Because it's kind of like hypocritical of me to say, well, you got to have a better approach at the plate. But then you also say, well, there's nothing you can do really as a coach there. You got to go up there and you got to hit the ball. You got to put the bat on the ball, right? And so it's hard for me to sit here and say, well, that's coaching, or no, that's not. It's hard. It's hard for me to say that, because at the end of the day, you're the one with the bat in your hands. You got to make something happen as well. And they just couldn't. Hats off to LeBaron Johnson, right? I mean, guy was throwing 95 to 97 all game, 126, 127 pitches, and he's still at 96, 97 miles an hour.
Absolutely.
There's not much you can do about that. However, look, we're supposed to be an elite team, right? After the first 2 or 3 times, after the first 2 times that you see this kid starting the same stuff, you got to make adjustments as well. So there's a little bit of that, going on there. And whether, I find it hard to believe that Gino and Norbert and, Lopes and them talk to the guys and then try to make adjustments. They just couldn't, put it together.
And I think that's a good point. Like, they're not coaching them to strike out. Like, so I mean, I think part of it we can certainly apportion some, maybe a lot of the blame to the coaches, because it does seem to be across the board. Base running blunders, situational hitting isn't good. We can certainly point some of the finger there, but to your point, when you step into that batter's box, it's on the hitter to make contact, to understand the situation. And I mean, that base is loaded, 1 out, and Levinson like swung for the fences and hit like a Texas leaguer, and it's kind of like, that's probably not the moment for that. LBJ was struggling with control there. Just to Melissa's point, it's not that we never work pitchers. It's like when they're struggling, we do quite a bit of bailing them out. Right. And the other thing that happened throughout the weekend, it was just magnified on the Saturday game when we didn't score at all, is the bottom of the lineup was just atrocious. Couldn't even get on base, couldn't get hits, couldn't do anything. Until Jacoby hit that home run late in the game against Louisiana. Like, it was a black hole. If every 3rd inning you get 3 automatic outs, like, that's death. Because even when you get guys on base, like, oh crap, the bottom of the lineup's up. Well, we got to wait till next inning.
Right.
And
that's the difference, because you saw guys like for Texas, like O'Dowd and Mitchell Daly and Jalen Flores at DH. That was their bottom of the lineup. Their 7, 8, 9 guys were Flores. What's the kid that I just mentioned?
O'Dowd.
Flores, O'Dowd, and Daly. And those 3, I mean,
right. I mean, they stepped up when ours didn't, because you look at their batting averages and stuff were in the 200s, just like ours were. They just stepped up. That rally that they put together, the 9 innings, started with 1 out in the bottom of their lineup up, and they got it going in front of their lineup.
Yeah, middle of the lineup, the front and the middle of the lineup got on base, and Jalen Flores.
Well, actually, it started with the bottom of I mean, they batted around, but it started with the bottom of their lineup getting on base to tee up the top of the lineup. So by the time their leadoff hitter, I think, hit the double that scored their first run.
Right.
But that was because the bottom 2 got on base.
Yep.
And we never had that all weekend. It was always Kafis had to start the rally, and then we had to score by the time like Levinson or Patelli came up because it was done. I mean, so it's very limiting then in how often you can score. And again, we really most of our runs were home runs again, and it was
And we've spoken about this
yeah.
since the beginning of the season. We're going to live and die by the home run, and that at the end of the day, when you need to put people on base, we need to get runners on base, and you need to kind of start a rally. It's tough to do that when all you're trying to do is hit the ball 500 feet.
Yeah, and there's and this is again that's where the unproductive outs come from. It's the strikeouts, it's the high pop ups instead of moving the runners over and just getting the ball in play. Like hit a fly ball, get a run. Instead, we're like striking out because we're trying to hit a home run. And it's no, just make contact.
It just looks like these guys, get desperate after a while. You know what I mean? And I understand that they're desperate to do something. They're desperate to get on base. They're desperate to get a home not to home get a home to get a base hit to do something productive. And when you get desperate, maybe you lose a little bit of focus. And I think that that's what happened. I don't think it's a lack of them, the will to want to get something done. I just think that you lose a little focus on what it is that you're up there to do, right? And you want to accomplish a certain something, but you end up losing focus because you want to do too much. And you can't hit a 5-run home run, and you can't hit a grand slam with nobody on base. You gotta do the little things to be able to drive in runs and manufacture some runs, and that leads to rallies. That leads to pitching changes. That leads to working pitch counts. That leads to a lot of different things. Anybody can give up a solo shot. You think if LeBaron Johnson gives up a solo shot, he's worried about it? No, he gave up a solo shot to Don Patelli, and he kept moving along, right? Like he's not getting people, he's not letting people on base. After the first 2 innings, I think there was one more inning that we had two men on base, and we didn't score that inning either. So it changes everything. And you mentioned this, Vish, like it changes how bullpens are used. It changes how pitchers are used. If you can manufacture runs, if you can get guys on base, if you can work counts, if you can do those type of things, move somebody over, if you can not bunt with 2 outs. And
I do not understand.
I couldn't get the words out. I know we were sitting together. I couldn't even get the words out.
I did. Well, I mean, I think this is so I can guarantee you Gino didn't call for that. And this is a situation where you have a player that, by the way, ended the season. His last hit, I think, was that home run at the end of the Duke game to walk it off. Yeah. Because he went 0 for whatever 16-17 in the ACC tournament. He definitely didn't get a hit this week either. And this is someone lacking confidence that thought he was going to get on base by doing that. And he's the slowest player on the team. And he I don't think he's ever bunted this year, and he pushed it. And that's what you're talking about, like panicky and not really stick. Like in fact, he comes up and we're like, look, we both were like, he's been hitting like crap, but he's got pop. Maybe he can, like, this is the one time you're like, you know what, Carlitos, swing for the fences.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll get a hold of one, and he punted. It's like the exact
with 2 outs in a critical situation.
2 outs. I don't even understand. And I like one of the things, and this is when we talk about, we were sitting next to Jackson Carver and Emery Williams. Nice name drops, Melissa. But one of the things we talk about, what can Gino do differently? I think he needs to manage that. I know he lets them to be loose, and he gives them a lot of autonomy. I think he's got to manage them a little bit more tightly and say, look, I'm going to do a little bit more calling in of things. Like, I mean, you can tell they're loose, which I think is why we hit so many home runs and why we generally play, that's why we come back a lot. Like, there's a lot of good with that, but some of the stuff we see where, some of this is just on the players themselves, but like Gino will be giving them the stop sign and they'll try to score and get thrown out by like 6 feet. You're like, That's not really on the manager when he's like, stop. And they're like, I'm going anyway. But also like, tell them that's not acceptable and stuff like this. You cannot have the autonomy to choose to bunt in that situation. If the coach doesn't signal it in, you got to swing away. And I think our players have a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
And occasionally
right? Does that speak to, for lack of a better description, the IQ level, baseball IQ of a player to be bunting in that situation.
I think he was panicked because he had been playing so badly.
Yeah.
It was almost like maybe this will work, and again, it's not even like he's a good bunter. I don't think he's ever even bunted before. And the one thing he does well, there wasn't a runner in scoring position. The only way he was really going to score him is to put it over the fence, and that is his best attribute at the plate. And I just don't understand how you're not swinging away there. It's really bizarre. It's really but I think that was just symbolic of where we were at that point. We gave up 9 runs with 2 of our better pitchers, and it was just like the whole air went out of the balloon, and then everyone was kind of panicky, and that was just kind of an extension of that.
I like that word they use, panic, because I think Gino panicked a little bit as well with the lineup, with the way that he used some of the hitters in certain situations. I think he panicked a little bit. I understand why he did certain things, but at the same time, I feel like maybe some of the decisions that he made, and this is kind of the first time that I see it this year, that he kind of made some decisions that you can go back and think, well, he probably could have done something different. And I'm sure he feels the same way.
So what are you thinking there then?
I mean,
in terms of
no, and I'm talking about some of the other times when you use certain guys like Jason Torres and Carrier, and maybe you might want to go to a veteran and Gabby Gutierrez at a certain time, right? I mean, I think that maybe that was a better option for certain situations. We've seen it, believe it or not, we've seen him come up big in some situations as well.
Well, this is the frustrating thing, right? Like you said, Gino's been like pulling these like random, let me make this call, that call, and they seem to have been working out until this week, and they did not.
Yeah.
But
that's where you got to tighten up, I guess, as a coach as well, and understand that this is a different ballgame here. Now you're talking about the NCAA tournament, and everybody is going to, for the most part, be, kind of locked in. And I'm not saying he wasn't, and I think the team was definitely locked in, but I just think that some of the decisions that were made could have potentially been, some decisions could have been made differently. And,
and part of it was actually
2020. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to say now.
So let me ask you a question. So we actually didn't talk about this last week because we were still trying to confirm it, but we had several players go into the portal other than Caden Martin. So and one of them, obviously Ariel Garcia was one of them, which, my personal one of my favorite players, but also was not playing, so whatever. But one of our players who started most of the year, if you notice, Ian Farrow did not feature this weekend. That's because he's not on the team anymore.
Right.
And how much do you think he might have gotten an opportunity here because we pinch hit with Jason Torres, with Carrier multiple times. Renzo kept starting right up until the last game.
That's another one, right? Yeah.
It kind of feels like, at some point he might have put his starting DH back in there, except he wasn't on the team anymore.
I think what you saw before earlier in the year was exactly that, right? If someone was struggling, then he'd bring the other guy back in. If Jason Torres started, but now he's struggling, he'd bring Ian Farrow back in to start, and so on and so forth. And I think that this is why it was such a crazy time to transfer, especially when you're a guy that, was being used quite a bit. Yeah, maybe you had some issues and he wanted to sit you down. I don't know what it was.
We don't know what happened. Yeah, I think we need to be clear on that.
I have no idea what happened, but that's a guy.
We certainly could have probably used his bat at some point this weekend, absolutely. And it was kind of weird that he was no longer on the team.
Very weird.
We did actually, like I said, we did actually see that in the middle. Actually, after we did the show last week, I think we saw it like on Thursday.
Yeah.
Because it was on the D1 Baseball's transfer chart. I was like, wait, what? Ian Farrow's in the portal? And then we were able to confirm over the weekend that he was actually he's not on the team anymore. And that did limit some of our pinch hitting options, because you got to figure he was probably the first option that we would have gone to in several of these games instead of Torres or Carrier, who Carrier's not really hit well since that North Carolina series. It feels like when he first came in.
Or even Dorian, right? Because I think that
Dorian, that's the frustrating. That was, I think that's one thing we actually talked about last week was, Dorian, even though his average was not high, had been seeing the ball well, hitting the ball, making good contact, and when he finally got in there, he actually hit the ball again this weekend. It was kind of, and it shores up the defense too, because it puts Sear to DH. So we only did some of that movement in the last game because we kind of had to. The other thing you can talk about more as a long-term thing is the inability to like give JD Jones serious playing time at all. So that when Carlito's struggling like that, the only option is Scanlon, who's kind of worse defensively and worse at the plate. And it's not really, I think JD Jones has some high upside batting at least. And, not really giving him any opportunities because he should have been an option we could have gone to, given that our starting catcher hadn't gotten a hit in 2 weeks. And it wasn't an option. That I think you can definitely criticize for that, for not working him in more so that he was a viable option. Because there's no way you could all of a sudden like start him in the regionals after he hasn't played. But like I think that there's some stuff to look back at. But for everyone saying fire him or whatever, like I'm unclear on exactly one. I totally agree the result isn't there, and like you can't keep hosting regionals and
the result is unacceptable no matter what.
Yeah, that's not acceptable. But when you go, there's a difference between a result being unacceptable and firing the manager. And I'm curious, as much as we can all complain, and we've touched on some of the things, I don't see anything egregious here. I'm like, I cannot believe we did this or that. LeBaron Johnson whipped our ass. Like, I mean, I know we hate to give credit to other teams, but that is the story of this regional.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, but that is the story of this regional. And at the end of the day, Texas showed up to our regional with 2 pitchers that are by far and away better than anyone on our staff, other than Walters, who's the closer.
Right.
Like, if we had both of those guys, they would be our first 2 starters also. And that's rare for a regional host to have a team show up that has that much better starting pitching. But that was the reality of what happened. Now, if we wonder how they ended up being a 2 seed, we saw it on the Sunday game when that guy came in and like was terrible. But then we gave up a 9 spot. It was game over anyway. But that's how you end up. You win 2 or 3, you lose a series because one of your top 2 guys go and you don't have a third starter. Like we've seen teams like that. That's how you end up not hosting. They did share the Big 12 championship though. Like this was a really good team, and we ran into one of the better pitchers in the country on one of his better days. And that happens. I don't really see. We can definitely, Gino could have done a little bit different with the pitching, but there wasn't like a great pitching option here.
Right.
And then the other thing, I mean, we could talk about, well, he could have given someone else a shot, but at the end of the day, Texas was better. They were. I mean, flatly, they're set up for this format and they executed.
I mean, their catcher had a concussion for crying out loud, and they went 3 for 4 the rest of the night. They're getting started on that.
That guy trying to start a fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's I guess we want to talk about next year a little bit. And
yeah, moving forward now, you're talking about a team that's going to have to replace a lot of guys.
Well, what we can do, since we repeatedly forget this. How about we do some prize picks?
Sure, let's do prize picks. If you picked, by the way, if you picked the over on Gabe Vincent last night, you probably won a lot of money, man. So why don't you guys keep putting your money on a guy like Gabe Vincent from the Miami Heat? No, but yeah, you guys definitely should go check out prizepicks.com. It's an amazing site. You can go out there, and when you sign up, put in the code 5. I actually got 3 signups last week from 3 friends of mine who have already won some money playing on prizepicks.com. Go check them out. When you sign up, put in the code 5, and they will match your initial deposit up to $100. It's that simple. Pick anywhere between 2 and a million players if you want, but 2 to 5 or 6 players.
I thought it was capped at 5. Is it a million?
I don't know. 2 to 5.
I think it's 2 to 5. I think it's 2 to 5.
Choose the over-under on those players on their individual categories and win some money. For instance, Game 1, Gabe Vincent's over-under was 12.5 points. He scored, I think it was 17 or 19 points, something like that. He obviously won some money there, right? So check out the over-unders on the NBA finals, the Heat finals. I'm such a homer. On the NBA finals with the Heat and the Denver Nuggets. You can also check out Major League Baseball on there. You can play some Major League Baseball, Formula One. You've got a whole bunch of different things. The NFL, college football, if I'm not mistaken. You got a whole bunch of different options. Depends on the season, depends on the sport. You can mix and match. So make sure you go to prizepicks.com. Code word is 5 when you sign up, FIVE, and they'll match you the initial deposit up to $100. Make sure you check them out, prizepicks.com. Yeah, so
all right, so let's do this. So let's just kind of, I think probably the way to approach this is I've got the current kind of roster up,
Okay.
by position. Let's just go through. All right,
Yeah.
this guy's here, this guy's gone, and then we can talk about. I do have the link too that you sent me with the recruiting.
We'll talk
class.
a little bit about that. I don't know a lot about them. I know
that we would know for sure. I mean, if we don't, oh, you're talking about the recruiting class,
yeah.
But we're, and then I think we'll both. Let's just get this out there. We're going to need to hit the portal quite a bit, but
yes, absolutely.
All right, so here's what we got right now.
So it's just simple. Dorian Gonzalez is either going to stay or transfer. Right?
I think he'll be back.
I think he'll be back too. I think he's got an opportunity to kind of make up for, for the sluggish year that he had this year, the down year. But I think he's a talented kid. He's a hell of a second baseman, and that is going to. And we'll get down to the third guy here in a second about that. But CJ Kafis, he's
gone.
Easily, he's potentially a top 5 round pick. So he's gone. Now you're talking about Mr. Blake Sear, who, second best player this year, potentially, hit 17 home runs as a freshman second baseman. Now, where he did lack a little bit was his in defense, right? He did have some issues because he's a natural shortstop. So you can tell by the way he throws. So this is the question, right? Do you move Blake Sear over to shortstop, give Dorian another shot, or do you continue to try to develop Blake Sear as a second baseman because his future as a second baseman is a lot brighter potentially than as a shortstop because he may lose some of those numbers. He may get kind of caught up in just being another really good shortstop, right? His qualities as a defender are, less than stellar, but it's something that he can build on and get better at. My issue with him is I like him as a second baseman for that reason, right? As a shortstop, you got to worry about a lot more, right? You're the top dog in that infield, and you've got to be able to cover more ground. You've got to make more plays. You got to focus a lot on the on your defense, and then that could take away from his bat. And I don't know if they want to do that. I don't know if they want to keep him there, if they're going to go into the transfer portal and get a shortstop.
Yeah, and that's the question, right? If we're gonna leave a second, because to Jazz's point, like it's kind of almost it's like a catch-22. If you move him to short, he's definitely that throw will be a lot more comfortable for him. That's where he's comfortable playing. But then he does kind of get caught up in the wash with all the other power hitting shortstops. Where as a second baseman, just in terms of his future at the next level, he will stand out a lot more as a power hitting second baseman than as a power hitting shortstop. But Poke, to your point, I don't know. I don't know if he can be consistent throwing to first. If he can't, that's not going to do him any favors being a second baseman if they don't think he can play there at the next level. So, but I think he'll be given the opportunity to work through some of that. But I'm totally fine with Dorian there and Sear either shortstop or DH too. I think hopefully both of them will be featuring quite a bit next year.
I don't know what Jack Scanlon does.
Look, I'll just put this out there. We need to upgrade the catcher position, whether it's JD Jones or someone else coming in.
Because I think there's a kid coming in that's
because this is just not really acceptable. What we're getting out of that.
Jack Scanlon might not be here next year. I'll be honest.
I'm not sure. This was his first. He did transfer in from Oregon. This was his first year here, but I don't know what he had in mind when he transferred, but I doubt it was hardly playing.
Right.
And batting in the hundreds. So I think
Zach Levinson is a tricky one for me because he showed that he can play the outfield, right? He did show that he's a plus.
Yeah, his fielding got better as the year went on.
My issue with him is he's still got some things to work on at the plate, right? As a hitter. Now, he projects as a plus power hitter. He projects as potentially a guy that can come in and play one of the corner outfield positions, or maybe even first base or something like that, right? So he's potentially a guy that could go play in the minor leagues and develop, get with a really good hitting coach, become a really good hitter, and he's fine. So his projectability I'm going to say is going to get him drafted early. I don't want to say the top 5 rounds, but I think he's a top 10 round kind of guy that could potentially get in there and get drafted and be a good pro at some point. So he's a tricky one though, because he can come back and be the guy here, right? The big bat in the lineup.
Yeah, well, I guess so. There's two things going on, right? And we actually talk about this quite a bit on Buckets, our basketball show, in terms of whether people should go pro or not. Do you think there's an opportunity for him to really improve his his draft stock that much, or is it more just, being the lead or one of the best players at the University of Miami baseball by itself is a big freaking deal,
It
right?
is.
So like, do you think it's more that, or do you really think
I
he
think
can
he's the way
improve his draft, like he can get a couple of rounds higher?
Well, here's the thing, right? Baseball's funny that way. I think if he gives the hint that he might go pro, they might draft him high enough where he's going to go. They might
Right.
still draft him and he'll come back either way. So, which is a strong possibility as well. So, you got to see where he goes. I think that's the most important thing. And then we'll kind of see.
Yeah, but to your point, the reason these are really complicated is a lot. Sometimes the round they're drafted is totally based on the signals they give teams on whether or not they're really these ones that have options of coming back. Like the teams aren't going to waste a draft high pick on you if they think you're going to go back to school and they just wasted a pick. So, so if you kind of give them the wink, yeah, I'll sign. Then that can actually get you drafted higher. And if you kind of, might hesitate, that'll cost you a few rounds. So it's more like, what's he thinking right now? If he really wants to be drafted, he can go to the teams and make it clear, I will sign, provide you.
He can still say all the right things and he may still not get drafted high enough and he'll come back. You know what I mean? So that's a possibility. Obviously, Brian Walters will be back from Tommy John surgery. He's the brother of Andrew Walters.
Yeah, we can't use Melissa's catchphrase without her on the show. We don't have coverage for that. So you can ask her on Buckets on Wednesday. Brian Walters. Do you think he's a potential star? I know we were going to use him out of the pen this year initially when he got hurt. Do you think he's a potential starter?
Definitely a potential starter. Absolutely. He's got a big arm as well. He's a 93 to 95 kid. When he's healthy, and now having Tommy John that could potentially get his arm even stronger. So I don't know if he'll be ready for the start of the season, but he hurt his arm. I think it was the first.
It was the first game. It was the first game.
First game. So the way things are going now with rehabs and all that, I can see him. He'll be back for the start of the season. I'm sure he will be.
Yep.
May take him a couple outings to kind of get back into it, but he's a kid that's very talented, and his brother Andrew will tell you that he's even better than him. That's going to be tough.
Yeah, that's not. We always hear that about the. He's even better than the father, the older brother. That's like they never actually are. So, but he's very talented. I think had he not gotten injured, he definitely would have. I think been starting by the end of the year. Yeah. So this year, Liggins back for sure. I don't think we need to spend much time on Liggins. He's definitely can't go pro, and he's going to be in our rotation.
And Martin won't be back.
I don't think he's going to undo his decision to go into the portal.
No. Rafe will be back. And
so let's not. I did see a lot of amazing performance. I felt some of our fans got a little carried away. Why wasn't this guy the ace all year? Like, look at his ERA. Calm down. He walked a lot of players, got into a lot of trouble. In fact, that Duke game where he made the comeback, he walked in a couple of runs and kind of helped dig that hole that then we homered our way out of, as we tend to do. But I think
he's got potential to come in and fight for a position, for a spot on the rotation though.
Okay, that's the question I wanted to ask you. Like, do you think he's a starter, or do you think he's still a bullpen guy?
No, I think that he showed that he has the potential to do it. He's gonna have to battle because you've got some guys coming back, and then you got some guys coming in that he's going to have to fight for, for a spot. I mean, he's a kid that could do a little bit of both. He's a Swiss Army knife right now in that pit on that staff. So it's tough, but if he can come in and he can continue to do what he did against Texas and build off of that, he could potentially be in that rotation.
And to Melissa's point, the consistency and also just like control. His strike to walkout ratio is poor.
He can start off as a midweek guy again and work his way into the weekend, so that could be a possibility for him.
Yeah, I think for him to be a starter that we rely on, he's got to come out and be be consistent, and we can't have him 1 week walking himself into trouble, and then the next week, I don't expect him to ever look like he did against Texas again, but to do that kind of thing 1 week and then the next week and then the next week just like walk the bases loaded, because you can't start doing that. Yeah. You can't have the starter come in and just like implode because they can't throw strikes. So Alex Walsh.
Look, he's got good stuff. He's a freshman, so
does he?
Yeah, he does. He does have good stuff. I like his stuff. I just think he's a kid that didn't get much burn, and then you bring him in and
So
know,
what does he top out at? I thought he was throwing in the 80s. Is he? Am I mixing him up with something?
No, I don't think I don't. I think the misconception is that 80s are bad stuff. I mean, look at Morehouse for Texas. He was what 87 to 89. He
No,
bumped
he
it.
was running up there in the mid 90s.
Yeah, he bumped it up there, but he's a freshman, 6'4". He's got he's got the build that you need, that you want as a pitcher. I think he's fine. I think you just got to give him some time. Not everybody is going to be a freshman All American. You know what I mean? So I think the stuff is there. The height is there. He's a left-handed pitcher.
We don't have a lot of lefty options.
Need left-handed pitching, so. Obviously Crowther and Cabo come back next year, which is huge, but we'll talk about them in a second.
Yep.
Patelli, that's another one that's kind of in the Zach
Borderline.
Levinson, right? I think that he's worked his way into a nice spot in the draft somewhere. I think that he's a very talented shortstop. He's got plus fielding ability at the next level. His inconsistency at the plate could hurt him, but again, if he gets with a good pitching coach, he could be a solid hitter, a solid guy with a little bit of pop as a shortstop. He could potentially play second base as well, but I just think that he's a really good shortstop. So I think that he projects well there at the next level. If he gets drafted, I don't know if he's a kid that can come in and get his draft stock much higher than where he's at now. He's not a huge kid, right? I don't know if he's really 5'11". So, I think he's right where he needs to be, and I think he can get drafted and do well at the next level. So, we'll see.
He's probably bored. It'd be huge for us if he comes back.
Yeah, it would be, and I don't expect it, but you never know if he falls out of like the top 10 rounds.
It's in play. I would say it's in play. I mean, some of the guys, in fact, the next guy we're about to talk about, no chance.
Yeah, no, he's a first rounder.
No chance, but like Patelli's in play.
Yeah, Dario Gomez will not be here next year.
Do you not have a COVID year? He's done.
I don't know. I don't know if he has a COVID year. That's
okay.
That's interesting. But if I had to choose right now, I say that if he got a shot to get drafted anywhere or even sign as a free agent.
Yeah, he's gone. And I actually don't know if he even wants to be back this year. Obviously, not go the way. If he had a year of eligibility,
he had a great year at UNLV the year before, so we were kind of hoping for him to come in.
No, and I will say again, not to just make this the Gino defense show, but he got so many opportunities and just never delivered.
He did. People is another interesting one, right?
I mean, so
he could get drafted just based off purely because.
I mean, I feel like I would love to have him back. I still think if you want a guy who's gonna if we could somehow figure his stuff out. I mean, that's all right. This guy's gonna give you 7 innings and they're gonna score a run and maximum. Right. Shout out to Jazz, a Cesar Carrillo type that you're just like, all right, he's gonna go in there, throw gas, and no one's gonna hit it. But except everyone hit it this year. So, but I also think with that kind of velocity, and he's shown he can go deep into games. He's shown he can work out of the pen. I think someone's going to draft him high, and
I think so too. He's got that.
I mean, you can't.
All in the world,
you can't pass on 98 miles per hour, man. It's just like so. I think he'll go, but I think if he comes back, he has the opportunity to be a lot better for us.
Closer. He could be the closer.
He could be the closer. He could also start and be the Friday guy if he can get his stuff together.
He's that good, right? He's good enough to be the Friday guy and good enough to be the closer.
I mean, you can see it. You can see it in person, and then he's good enough to get shelled in the first inning and get. I mean, it's a lot of mental stuff with him. He's got to work out, and that's why if you notice, Gino's very careful about reiterating. I've got confidence in him. I know what he's capable. He's got to keep that confidence up. But I mean, if I'm a major league GM and I see this kid and I know I can get him in kind of a mid round, I'm thinking you got to do it, man. Look at the velo. You can't coach. You can develop all sorts of stuff to get him mentally right. You can help him, work on his secondary and third pitches. But man, you cannot coach 98 miles an hour. It's just. I feel like he's got and that's why I think he'll go. Ariel Garcia obviously gone.
Guys, they're gone. They're already in the transfer portal.
Yeah. Brandel's also in the transfer portal, although that I don't think there was a role for him. Zeal should be back.
That's a guy that could, he'll probably be a weekend starter.
Yep.
I think he'll be back.
This is a good point. Just in the chat, like McFarland got drafted just off of like having Pilo also.
Exactly. So. That's a good point, TBB. Yep.
So the only reason I get going back to the discussion with Levinson, if for whatever reason people really wants to come back and makes that clear, but if he actually wants to be drafted, he'll go high enough where he would go. So.
He might go in the 4th round and get 2nd round money. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah, with that kind of power. All right, Gaio could technically go, but I think he'll be back.
But, I mean, he's got good stuff too, but he's still got to work on some things.
Yep.
JD Jones. I mean, it's transfer portal. He sticks it out. I mean, at this point, and look, the truth is, like you mentioned it, right? Like Carlos Perez is struggling big time. We'll get to him in a second. He struggled with the bat mightily. Jack Scanlon's just not the guy, if you ask me. I've always liked JD Jones. You know, I've been an advocate for getting him some more playing time. I just think he's a tough kid. He's a hustler. He's not bad behind the dish. He's a little stiff, but I just think that's just the way he is. But see him swinging the stick. You know, he's got an idea up there. He's he knows how to handle the bat a little bit.
So what do you think's going on there that he's not really gotten a shot in 2 years?
I don't know. I really don't know what it is, man. I guess they don't see him as, the guy, but he could be the guy now. He could take a step up and he could develop and get better.
I would be surprised if he's not in the portal.
I would be too, but I think it's the portal, or he gives it a shot to try to be the guy next year.
Yeah.
Yo-Yo's
you think this Yohandi guy might leave?
He's okay.
What do you think J Ro's opinion is on this?
Look, let me tell you something about that.
So deflating.
If there's anybody on the chat that was at the game.
Oh my God.
Okay, or anybody that rewatches this, if you rewatch this, or if you're in the chat, if you rewatch it, send us a DM or send us a message on Twitter. If you're watching it now, when you're walking up to the plate and it is potentially your last at bat in college baseball, and you're the best player on the team, you're one of the best players in college baseball, period. When the announcer says it loud and clear to the whole entire world, including you, right before you go up to bat, that this could potentially be your last at bat as a Miami Hurricane, throw the bat at him. Throw the bat at him.
There's so much wrong with it. First of all, look, it's not likely that you're coming back. 4 runs is not 40. Like, what are we? Load the bases. They hit a grand slam. How are you giving up? How are you giving up like that?
How are you saying it out loud? Shame on you, J-Ro. Good Lord. I wish I didn't drink your shake the other day.
I was about to say, we got to boycott the shake now.
I'm boycotting the J-Ro until he gives an apology on Twitter or something.
Look, even Melissa was upset, even though she spent the last 4 innings pointing out that we're not going to see that guy again. We're not going to see that guy again. To me, making me extra depressed. But I've never even seen anything like that.
The guy has to hear that while he's going up to bat. I don't care.
So for those that weren't at the game, and I don't know if this came over, like if you could hear it on the TV feed, but as Yo-Yo's going up to the plate, J-Ro, who's the stadium announcer, legend, says, "Ladies and gentlemen, this will potentially be the last at bat for Yo-Yo Morales as a Miami Hurricane." And we're all like, "There's a runner on first and 1 out, buddy. What are we doing?
What are you doing?
We got 3, 4, 5 coming up. Like 5 is the tying run. What's happening here?" Such defeatism.
So disappointed with that. So disappointed. Shame.
Such a weird thing to do.
Something so dumb. Anyways.
He might not have said potentially. I might just have been, trying to clean it up a little.
Maybe or might be or something like that.
Whatever it was completely absurd.
This is his last night. He said
it's fine if the TV broadcaster says it, right?
Right.
No, that's a little bit different than the stadium announcer in the stadium. Like you said, Yo-Yo hears this going up, right?
They said it because they heard J-Ro say it.
Yeah, this is it's bizarre. Who gives up like that?
So stupid.
Could you imagine? I'm going way back, but 4 down the Fiesta Bowl. This could be Ken Dorsey's last pass, or whatever.
Yeah.
or you could win the game. Like, what are we doing here? Anyway, it obviously didn't affect the outcome. It was like such a bizarre thing. It's like, who thought that was a good idea?
Stupid.
Anyway,
Jason Torres will obviously be. I mean, as
The
of right
starting
now,
third
he's
baseman.
going to be the starting third baseman
Yeah,
next year.
yeah. And the future, look, he's not yo-yo good, but he is very good.
He's very good.
We're gonna feel the drop off because yo-yo is one of the best players to ever play here, and you can't expect Jason Torres to just be that. But he is 100% going to be one of the best third basemen in the ACC.
Oh yeah.
So like this kid's awesome. Like we're in good shape there.
Jacoby Long is probably going to be one of the best outfielders in the ACC.
Yeah, he's got to work on his bunting if he's going to try and bunt with his speed. Because
oh man, but I think he's a talented kid, man. He's got to work some things out at the plate.
Yeah, what do you think happened there this year? Because every time he got in there, he was hitting. Yeah. And then he only got the starting job like very late in the season.
Look, man, as a coach, it's tough. It's tough to make decisions like that sometimes. It's tough to make switches throughout the year. You want to try to stick with your guys. We mentioned there, right? With Dario, he tried to stick with Dario.
That's true. That's the other side of that.
Yeah. And it just at some point, it was like enough is enough. Jacoby's getting on base. He's doing he's doing some of the right things, man, at the plate. Let's give him a shot. And he took it and he ran with it, right? So I think that he comes back strong as potentially, one of the top outfielders in the ACC, and if he can swing the bat consistently, then we've got a good one there in Jacoby Long at center field. So I like that. I like for him to stick around.
Do you think he's a potential leadoff guy next year?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think
Kafis is gone for sure.
Right,
so.
Right. And you got to get a strong leadoff guy. So if he doesn't work out, obviously there's some other stuff we'll talk about, but. Just going down the list, Miles Cava is obviously one of our big left-handed pitchers.
So just we referenced earlier, and we'll go the bottom list right. That's on the screen right now, just to like tie it together. But Crowther and Cava were supposed to be two of our big kind of left-handed arms, and they got injured, didn't even play this year. So when you start talking about like why is our pitching depth so shallow, lost those two arms, lost Ligon for a lot of the year. This is where your depth comes out of, and those two were both, and Cava's a more experienced guy that we brought as a transfer really to start.
And,
he wasn't healthy. Yeah, I mean it sucks.
Ian Farrell's obviously not on the team anymore, so done.
It's still bizarre that he transferred for the postseason.
Look, initially I would say that this would be a head scratcher for me, but. I think Ben Chestnut, because I was like, oh, maybe he enters the transfer portal. He got a lot of pitching time, right? He got a lot of innings. I mean, it could change next year with the return of some of these other guys.
I would say his ceiling is really midweek guy or
Jake Garland.
Yeah, that's a good comp, Jake Garland. But Jake Garland got some sun. Like, I don't think he's I think Chestnut. I don't think Chestnut's a weekend starter at all. And I think he's either long relief when you're down big and you just need to eat innings, or midweek starter. I don't think he's got anything beyond that.
Yeah, sometimes that's the role for some guys. Yep. So that's fine. Edgardo Villegas, here's another interesting guy as a leadoff spot, right? And I know he struggled with the bat down, towards the end. I don't want to say the whole season, but. He had his moments at the beginning of the season. Middle of the season, he started to kind of tail off a little bit, and we saw him sit a couple of games and, them start some other guys in the outfield. It was kind of a merry-go-round there with that. But at the end of the day, he's got all the tools and all the makings of a great leadoff guy, right?
Yeah.
Lefty, fast kid, can bunt a little bit, plays the outfield well. For the most part, I know we get on him a lot about some of the plays.
He annoys me beyond belief, and I think it has a lot to do with me and less to do with him. So I'll just put it that way.
All right, but I get it. Sometimes he kind of loses focus, and
I think it's more. I mean, obviously he had some errors in like the ACC term, but I think it's more. I'd rather the outfielder be aggressive, and he's risk averse the way he plays this. So he doesn't give up a lot of like unnecessary doubles by like he'll get behind the ball, and sometimes I'm like, dude, just try to go catch it. But there's a downside to that. It's not like a no brainer that otherwise everyone would just do it, right? If you miss the ball, it's a double or a triple versus just a single for sure. But I think that's why I say it's more me than it is him doing anything necessarily wrong. It's just.
And by the way, he's a kid that can play center field also. If Jacoby starts putting up some big power numbers, you can move him to the corner. You can do a lot of things there. So I still like him as a potential leadoff guy as well.
And I think I think to your point, he struggled some this year. He was kind of up and down. He's someone that needs to get it together. He's got more talent than his production has shown.
Right.
And so I think and that's why he's another one that Gino kept rolling out there, because he's like, this guy has the talent and it's too talented to just take out of the lineup. But he's got to reward that next year, and really he's got to be hitting in the 300s. Like, we can't have this. So he's way too talented to be producing what he is.
I agree. We're almost done here, people.
Yeah.
Carlos Lecarica is another guy that's going to come back, and he may have a role.
So it's a senior here. He's got a COVID year or something.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. Yeah, he might. I think he might be a COVID guy. If not, he down. He came from FIU.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not sure now.
I'm not sure either.
We'll have to We'll get back to you guys with that. Ashton Crowther, as we mentioned earlier, the left-handed pitcher who's hurt for, I think it was Tommy John surgery as well. So he'll be back next year. Big-time lefty that we are kind of depending on to be a big arm in the bullpen or as a starter next year.
Yep.
He is a freshman, so he'll be obviously a redshirt freshman.
He'll probably start not starting, because we basically never start freshmen unless it's been a long time.
Right.
What, Michael Medavia is probably, I think, the last one that we started.
Yeah. Yep.
Who was the ace of a team that went to Omaha, and then his career kind of fell apart here. But yeah, no, I think he's probably the last one that we're like, all right, this guy should be starting on Fridays as as a freshman. I think, and so I'd be surprised if he's starting there. But I think there are starting spots available if you step up, you can get into the weekend rotation.
It definitely is. So
yeah.
Torres. So Torres is he's another guy that, I mean,
he could
close it. He could close.
Yeah, he could be. He closed one game where Walters wasn't available. I think right now he's in line to be the closer. I think so too, because of his mentality. He is a bulldog, and he
will
not
really
get
hard. He's like 91 to 92.
Yeah. That's, I think, the only thing holding him back is he's hittable. And a closer, you kind of want someone that's like just no. But things in his favor, he does not walk a lot of players. He executes his pitches well. Like, he hits the spots pretty much consistently, but because he's low 90s versus mid to high 90s, you can hit him.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the trade-off there. But he also doesn't get rattled, which is big for a closer. Like, he gets in,
and he's got secondary pitches.
Yeah, he's got secondary pitches, and in pressure situations, he continues to hit his spots, and execute his pitches. And he 100% hit that dude's bat yesterday when they called it a hit batsman and stole a run off of him.
Was it what's the name?
That was after he struck someone out, and everyone's walking off the field, and the called it a ball. So that was a BS run. It didn't matter in the long run. But anyway, for him, he's definitely going to be a key arm. It's kind of just where they choose to use him.
I love the segue. Key arm. Talk about key arm. Here's a key bat. Key utility type of guy that can play the outfield and he can play the infield. I just don't know if he's going to want to stick around. That's my biggest concern with Renzo Gonzalez is he going to stick around? I know he got his shot as a DH, play a little bit of the outfield, spelled CJ every once in a while when the games were out of hand and we had it rolling. My question is he going to stick around, or is he going to enter the transfer portal and try to maybe go somewhere where he can be the guy?
Well, here's a question: is he going to be the guy at first base here?
That's a tough question to answer, because we've got some guys that are coming in, and we keep talking about that also, right? We keep talking about certain positions that they're going to have to really look at the transfer portal too, and the first baseman is one, because you're losing. I mean, he's one of the first. I liked him. He's one of the best first basemen to play here.
Yeah.
Was an absolute stud. And I said it even the days when Alex Stroh was playing first base, and said, this kid's a better hitter than Alex Stroh. Get Alex Stroh the hell out of here.
I don't recall talking about that with you.
Yeah.
I was definitely not 100% wrong there.
Yeah.
that could not have possibly happened. Also, just shout out to Melissa for not hearing earlier when I plugged Buckets already, but I'll plug it again. Basketball show Wednesday, Buckets.
Yeah, they got a nice guest coming on too.
Yeah, we got a guest coming on this week, but 9 p.m. on this Wednesday. That show moves around. It's not a consistent time because one of my co-hosts works nights. She will remain nameless, but I did actually plug the show earlier. So
her name rhymes with Alyssa Ground.
Let's not point fingers. But yeah, anyway, to your point, Terrell had kind of that. CJ kind of stole the position from him to a certain extent. Just he was better, I mean, flatly.
That's it.
So yeah, that was. But yeah, I think Renzo will stay if he feels he has an actual realistic shot to compete for a starting spot somewhere. And I don't know that he does, to be honest.
I don't know.
Depending on what we do in the portal, because he's
good.
Like
typical. Neither was CJ, but CJ did hit 13 bombs this year, so he had a bit of a better power year. But he also hit 350, right? So I mean, it's tough to find guys like that. And I don't know if Renzo is your prototypical first baseman that's going to be able to hit for power and drive in a lot of runs. And you need that in your lineup. If you're not going to get it from, from your third base or from your shortstop, which I think you'll get it from Jason Torres.
Yeah, I think we better get it from our third baseman.
But you got to get it from somewhere. So if you need a few guys like that.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge for Renzo is he's a utility player. He can do a lot of things solidly.
Right.
Don't really see the area where you're like, well, he's just like the best player on the roster at doing a single, like at this or that. It's kind of like he's someone you can kind of rely on, throw back half of the lineup, and he'll give you solid at bats. He's okay in the field. He's a good depth guy that you can plug in if someone's injured and start in some midweeks and pinch hit with. That's probably not a big enough role for him. So depending on how we fill out the roster, he very well might be in the portal, like you said.
Yeah, this is a guy that I think both of us like, Sebastian Perez.
Yeah.
Big kid, 6'5", 230. He's a big boy, and he showed that he can pitch a little bit, man.
Yeah, he was kind of the guy I was kind of relying on this last week. I was like, we need to eat some innings in a game that's not like where we don't want to burn our top bullpen arms. He's someone you can, get in there and that can do some things. I will say with all the pitchers we have, like him, Alex Walsh, obviously Brendel already in the portal, and we're gonna talk about Cinta next too. You think all of them are gonna actually be here?
No, that's another. Yeah, he's another potential transfer portal casualty for sure. I mean, along with Cinta, right?
Yeah.
If, Crowther and Kaba and some of these other guys come in.
Because again, Cintas you can't be with Rafe, Crowther, Kaba. They got all these lefties. All of a sudden, the left-handed specialist role is a little crowded.
Yeah, so it's gonna be tough. Although I think Cinta stays. Cinta loves this program. He's a local kid, but that doesn't mean anything. But I think that he might, stick around.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
We all like Cinta, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm curious what happened in that middle part of the season where he kind of stopped getting opportunities, and then in the ACC tournament was the first time he pitched in a long time, and he was really good, and then he was obviously good against Texas,
right,
as well. But assuming it wasn't like a personal thing or like beef with Gino or something, I think it'll be fine. But otherwise, like, I think he will have a major role here. It's just some of these kids like Renzo, right? He's going to play if he's here. He's not going to play every day, probably not like we're penciling you in at this position to start that's not going to be his role, but he's definitely a good player that would play. I think Cinta's similar from a pitcher standpoint. I don't know that he's going to be a starter, and I don't know that he'll have he's not going to be the closer, right? So it's kind of like it's going to be kind of a situational arm we'll call on. Maybe he can show a little bit more endurance, and then carve out as a long or middle reliever where we know we can go to him for 2 to 3 innings or something. And but we have to kind of figure out what his role is, and this is where the portal comes into play. And people are like, you can start right now for us, and then
Renzo. I mean, he could.
Yeah, same with Renzo. If there are definitely a lot of high level baseball programs where he can start, and here's
another one that could start is Gabby Gutierrez.
Yeah, he's another one.
I think he's a transfer portal casualty for sure at this point.
Yeah.
Just based off of Gino didn't go to him down the down the wire, and and he's a kid that kind of showed potential last year, coming up with some big hits at some clutch situations.
And he did a couple of times this year too when he was called on, but just no real opportunities. And once kind of Jason Torres moved in front of him in terms of they're obviously not the same position, but no one was going to go in for Yo-Yo at third, so that wasn't really an issue. But all right, I'm going to pinch hit someone. I'm going to Jason Torres. once that switch, because that switched in the middle of this year, it used to be Gabby getting those at bats.
Yep.
I think obviously like Yo and several of these other guys are going, but now if you're behind the freshmen kind of in the pecking order and how you're being viewed, it's harder to justify sticking around. I think he's probably in the portal.
And your boy Carlito.
I honestly don't even know.
He's the starting catcher until otherwise.
Well, here's the thing, right? He's definitely, if we bring this roster back like in its entirety, he would start again. I honestly don't know how to even evaluate him, because like the average wasn't good and he completely dropped off a cliff at the end of the year. But I mean, the power is there, and it's just kind of such a difficult player to evaluate at that position. But we need more consistency at that position, especially since that 2 years ago he was batting in the hundreds. He started off this year batting in the 300s, and it dropped all the way down to the low 200s. But he almost like regressed back to what he was doing last year with power, though.
Right.
That's frankly not good enough, and we need other options at catcher to at least push him.
Right. I agree.
And then Melissa's boy, who she said she's never seen hit the ball, Lorenzo Carrier.
This is a mind.
He's got to learn how to hit the curveball, man.
Yeah.
That's it. He can't hit the curveball.
He could be so special with that size, that power, the ability to just go up there and hit the ball 500 feet.
Right on, man. Right on.
Yeah, if he can hit the off-speed stuff, that's our first baseman. Because he sucks in the out. I mean, I don't think he sucks. He just doesn't have a lot of range.
No, I think it's partially lack of range. It's partially he doesn't read the ball well off the bat.
You teach him how to pick the ball. You teach him how to do some things at first base.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things working well from at first base. One is he's a huge target to throw to.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's gonna make it easier for our infielders. I mean, he'll be a prototypical like tall power first baseman.
Yeah, right.
If he can hit the off-speed stuff.
I'd be okay with him hitting 280, 290 and having 17, 18, 19 home runs,
Right, as long, but if he's going to do that, he's got to hit the off-speed stuff. He's got to hit the curveball. You cannot just hit fastballs. And even Gino, he put him in against North Carolina. He started hitting bombs, and everyone's like, and it was like, wow, where have you been hiding this kid now? Well, a couple of things. He got injured his first year, so he wasn't fully healthy yet. But the other thing is, Gino even said this right there in the press conference, was like, yeah, no, he hits the fastball really well. He knew, and it took opposing coaches about 30 seconds to figure out, don't throw this kid a fastball. Just keep the off-speed stuff. He will go fishing for it, and until he figures out how to do that, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So he's got to do that. But he'll definitely be back. He's key in the coach's plans.
Right, for sure.
Because like you said, he's got all the tools there, and it's just, he needs to spend the entire offseason just working on hitting off-speed stuff.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting.
All right, you want to quickly? I know we don't know a lot about the.
I'll just tell you quickly here on those really quick that I. By the way, they have the number 8 recruiting class in 2024, and this is kind of just just a little bit about who we're going to see here potentially next year. I'm sure some of these kids may get drafted early, but right off the bat, one of the biggest names is Michael Torres, one of the nationally ranked teams in the best teams in the country in Durham Academy, which is where Don Patelli played his ball as well. Michael Torres is a big-time prospect. He's a kid that can come in right away. Another one is Miami Christian, another nationally ranked team as well. Another outfielder, Fabio Peralta. David Shields, this kid I don't know much about. I don't know much about out-of-state kids. So Mount Lebanon and Pittsburgh.
I will say generally when we go out of state to get
some of these kids
they can play. He's got good. I mean, again, I don't know anything about any of these kids to be honest, but tall lefty.
Right.
There you go.
I'll take it. Elijah Hurt, another outfielder, big kid, 6'1", 180 from Riverview. That's a strong program over there in Central Florida. Johnny King is a kid from Naples who played at, what's the name of the school? I can't remember now. But another big, tall, 6'4", 185-pound lefty, left-handed pitcher. So that's big. Florida Christian always brings. You want a big pitcher? You got another one here. You got a
6'6".
6'6", 230. There's a big boy, Lazaro Calera here from Florida Christian, a big right-handed pitcher. And then you got Ethan Puig from Westminster, one of the top programs in the country, obviously in the state of Florida as well, Westminster Christian, down here in your neck of the woods, Vish.
Yeah, just around the corner from me where I am sitting right now.
That's right. A prospect, a nice looking prospect that's 6 feet. AJ Siskar is a kid from St. Thomas Aquinas up in Broward. Another right-handed pitcher, tall right-handed pitcher. Elliott Sand, big kid from DeLand, another 6'3". And you got Mackay Griffin from Trinity Catholic. So this is a school up in, I believe it's North Florida, 6'2".
Lady Lake. I don't know where the hell that is, but
I think it's
definitely not from around here.
No, but he's a fireballer. So a nice looking prospect too, 6'2", 195. I think he's a draft guy that's looking at the draft as well. And then you got a kid, Howard Tate Darius. What a name, Howard Tate Darius.
He's from New Jersey, so I don't know if you can call him that.
Gloucester Catholic, 6'4", 190, another big, tall right-handed pitcher. Ethan Severa, here you go. Here's your catchers here, Vish. Kid from Canterbury. I don't know the school Canterbury, but he's in Fort Myers, so a local kid per se, over on the west coast of Florida. 6'1", big kid, 6'1", 202. Then you got Ryan Ashford, another left-handed pitcher. They looks like they're stacking up on some lefties, which is nice to see.
Well, I think we're talking about, as I say, they're stacking up on a lot of stuff because they know a lot of these kids aren't going to end up on campus. So
this is a kid that I think could come in and be a big-time kid if he doesn't get drafted and leave. It's Nolan Johnson, the catcher, 6'5", $193, from Thousand Oaks in California, baby. You know, when we go to California, you grab a kid. He's going to get drafted potentially, or he's going to come here and be a stud. And I just like the name. I love everything about it. 6'5", Nolan Johnson. That guy's a catcher, bro. That's a big-time guy right there. Westlake High School over in California. I think this is a kid that has the potential to come in and play right away as a catcher or DH. And then you got Jose Jacin from downtown Doral, another kid from Doral. Smaller, this is the smallest kid, 5'10", $155. So he might be Tim Lincecum. Who knows though, man? Right? 5'10", 155. Tim Lincecum, maybe.
Wow! Just don't put any pressure on the kid, man. Just go ahead. And be like, well, you're clearly Tim
Chassin, we need you to beat Tim Lincecum. Get it together. It's a really good recruiting class. So. The only thing I don't know if you notice here, the only thing, if you want to scroll up a little bit to the top there, Vish, no shortstop. No shortstop.
Is that so?
This is my thought, right? My thought again is, Vish, they're going to go into the transfer portal and get a shortstop, man. I think so.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? One is we're not going to bring in 10 freshman pitchers, or maybe even more. So I think they know. So, like, a lot of these guys aren't going to end up on campus.
Yeah.
The other thing, Blake Sear is an option at shortstop.
Right.
Dom might come back.
Right.
And then, so I think that'll dictate. But I don't think they trust any freshmen to come in and play shortstop straight away. So it'll either be Blake, or it'll be a portal, or it'll be Dom. And
the draft is soon, if I'm not mistaken. Major League Baseball draft, right? It's not that far.
Yeah, no, because the kids used to get drafted during super regionals when we used to make it that far. So
to make it that far.
Yeah, because I remember they get drafted during the game. They would announce someone would be up to bat, and they'd be like, "Oh, you just got drafted by whatever," and it used to be super regionals. It might be a little bit different timing now, but it's coming up very soon.
I'm looking at it now to see what the date is. July 9th through the 11th. Yeah.
Okay, so they pushed it back, probably because of that stuff, because it was weird.
Yeah.
2 on game tying run on third. Oh, you just got drafted.
I like that they moved it back.
Yeah, it's definitely good to do it after the World Series, so that the kids can focus on the college stuff. And then
look, man, I know a lot of people got on me for saying it was a heartbreaker yesterday also, but if you love this team the way that we love it, for them to lose, it's just heartbreaking too, because you feel for these kids as well. They work hard, man, and Gino worked hard this year. I got to give it to him. I think he did an excellent job coaching this team this year. JD did great with that pitching staff as well, with what he had to work with. Um, and yeah, there was a couple of things that they could have done differently in the tournament. But at the end of the day, man, you beat the number one team in the country in the ACC tournament. You made a nice run there. You lost in the championship game to another team that was a national seed, and then you go in and you kind of lay an egg a little bit in the regional. But it's disappointing. But I think that as a Miami Hurricane baseball fan, man, you're gonna go through this. You're gonna go through this as a football fan, as a basketball fan, and the worst thing you can say is that you quit on a team, or that you quit watching them because they lost in a regional, or because Gino DeMari is a baseball coach. I think that's a weak argument. I think it's a weak thing to say, and quite frankly, it's a lazy thing to say.
And that's the frustration.
As a fan, that's not a fan. That's not a real fan, man.
Well, I mean, I'm open to the argument of what specifically he's doing wrong that the next guy is going to come in and do better.
Right.
And give me that. Not just say he keeps losing, because that's not an answer. What it specifically is this new coach that we've invented that's some genius is going to come in and do better, because there's a much higher percentage chance this new coach you bring in isn't getting you into the top 10, isn't getting you into regional.
I kept hearing bring Lovelady in. I'm like,
Lovelady got fired just now. Like, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about?
I mean, he got fired for a reason.
Right.
And I mean, we only have to look up the road to Tallahassee and for them, and we are doing much better than they were at the time, but for them, it was making the postseason wasn't good enough. They went and get a coach who had won at a high level in the ACC at Notre Dame. They are now the worst program in the ACC.
Yeah.
That's all it took was 1 year of that. Like, I think we take for granted how hard it is to maintain a top 10 program. We've been in the top 10 the last 2 years. And we need to get out of regionals, and we need to get out of super regionals, and we need to get to Omaha. And I think we're all in agreement there. But what I disagree with, and what I will not get on board with, is the way to do that is to fire this manager right now.
Right.
Because I don't see and I'm not even saying like name a specific coach, because we don't know a lot of college baseball coaches and we follow the sports. So I don't expect other people to, right? But like, that's why I'm like, specifically, what should this new coach do coming in that Gino's not doing? What is the improvement he makes that's going to have us hit LeBaron Johnson?
Because from a recruiting perspective, I mean, Gino and the staff recruits the best in the country.
From a results perspective, right? You're putting teams constantly in the top 10 by the baseball committee. When they call names on Sunday, they're saying this is one of the best programs in the country over the last 2 years.
Right.
Now, did we perform in postseason? Absolutely not. And Gino will be the first to tell you that. And he needs to look at his own approach and say, why are we not performing in the postseason? Why, to Louise's point, why aren't we getting over the hump? And he needs to address that. And that is his job. And no, it's not acceptable to fail at this stage every year. But that's also not fireable when you're putting your teams in positions to succeed and getting them to the brink of that point. If we were coming in as a 3 seed every year and losing in regionals, that's different. Right? Then you're like, this program is not even good anymore. They're barely making the tournament. We are a top 10 team. I mean, we were ranked 8th in the major polls coming into the NCAA tournament. We had I don't know. There isn't that much more to even improve on. It's not a situation where it's like a football team missing bowl games. You're like, this is not acceptable, right? This is a program that is right there with the best in the country. And you know what? I know we have very short memories, but the program he took over missed the NCAA tournament the last 2 years before he took over. And he has made it every year. And unfortunately, he didn't get to see his best team through because of COVID. Right. And eventually that excuse goes away, and he's got to own it, and just he's got to deliver in the postseason. Right. Because even when we weren't hosting, like that one we lost in Gainesville where UF went 0-2 and we couldn't beat USF and F8 and in South Alabama, like that's not. There's been some unacceptable postseason performances. Losing at Starkville wasn't one of them. but certainly losing at Gainesville when we didn't have to play Florida is, and then losing at home twice. So we won it. So first of all, we won the last national title. You want to know how long ago it was? I was in college. So that's great and everything.
2001.
Yes, that's great and everything. Yes, we won 4 titles before him. We also went 15 years before him without winning anything.
Right.
And we missed the NCAA tournament the 2 years before he took over. So I again, if you hire a coach and you've missed the postseason 2 years in a row, and he repeatedly puts you in the postseason, and the program keeps moving forward, and you keep getting into the top 10 at the end of the year, look, it's baseball. Eventually the ball will bounce our way. Melissa touched on this earlier, Jazz, you talked about this at the game. That whole game swings because they were trying to steal third when they hit a grounder right to Yo-Yo, and he would have easily turned to him. We would have gotten out of that inning, except he was covering the bag, and he tried to reach back. He couldn't reach back and grab the ball. That's baseball, man. And baseball is a game that is meant to be played over 150, 160 games to get the actual quality out of it. And then you put it into a postseason, whether it's the majors or whether it's college, and crap happens in one game of baseball. Even the best teams in the majors, you play 160 games, they lose 60. You get into a situation where it's 1 or 2 games. Like, you win 100 games in the majors, like, that's one of the best teams we've seen. They still lost 60 times. Like, that's baseball.
You're a Hall of Famer. You're a Hall of Famer if you fail 7 out of 10 times.
Yeah. The best hitters fail 7 out of 10 times. It's baseball. And so, unlike football and basketball, where you can outplay the other team, you have your full squad all the time, and you can dominate like that. Baseball, like, you don't use the same pitchers, so you're automatically, like, a lot of times you're not playing with your best players, and sometimes you have a bad matchup, or the other team just has a stud pitcher, and, like, when you get in these 1 and 2 game scenarios, like, it's baseball. It's the name of it. It's the way it is. So I am fine. Yeah, exactly. There's so much more unpredictable.
Hit a round baseball with a round ball with a round bat, and it's it's the truth. Yeah, and by the way, I want to. As far as the strikeouts are concerned, I'm also very disappointed in that. We did strike out a lot, and that's something that does need to be addressed. And that's all about plate discipline. That's about your approach as a hitter, and that is coaching, but it's also you. You gotta put both together.
So I think that's one of here's I want to answer this and that at the same time because I think this is a good question because
it's a good question. It's a valid question.
Yeah. So I honestly don't know. It's actually okay. So this is gonna come off as a criticism, Gino, and it probably is. It is very hard to repeatedly host regionals and not get out of it. So, like, if you're telling me he's gonna keep somehow getting us, because hosting means top 16 at least.
You might have to look at it if after a couple more years he could.
Yeah, if we somehow continue to, like, oh yeah, we're ranked 7th in the country and flame out in the regionals again and again. Yeah. I mean, I guess we're not in the locker room, so it's hard to know what exactly he would be doing to cause that. But you can't, if it happens another 2 times or whatever, we keep hosting regionals or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you do have to say, I don't know what's broken here, but he's obviously not capable of fixing it. On the other hand, I would say the way he gets into trouble is we stop hosting regionals. Like, if we end up on the road next couple of years and losing in regionals, that's a different story altogether when you're saying, okay, how come we can't play well enough in the regular season to host? Right. And that's a different conversation. But if we continue to be at the top of one of the best conferences in baseball, which we are, and host, it's going to be very hard to move on from him because it's going to be almost impossible to upgrade from that. I know people don't want to hear that. Gone are the days where, Jim Morse used to tell the story about how when he got to Miami, they asked him where he wanted to stay in Omaha before the season started. Like, that's not happening anymore. And that is not because our program is diminished, although it has. It's because there's just parity across sports. Like, it's not just North Carolina used to be in the Final Four every year. They couldn't make the NCAA tournament last year. Like, that's just the way sports is now. So the idea that
if you think about that, you take into perspective what Miami has done as a baseball program. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable, right? It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think anyone's saying, like, the standard is not to get to Omaha. So hopefully you're not hearing that, like, saying this is good enough, because it's not. It's not. Like, we should not have lost a home regional.
I agree.
But the only thing you can do is put yourself in a position to succeed. And it's very hard to improve from number 6 overall and number 9 overall. And you're asking to fire the coach to somehow make that happen? I mean, I don't see how you could possibly do that. Now, again, if there's a drop off in the, it's not only about regular season results, but there's a drop off there. Like, what if we finish, as a 2 seed next year, and then we get out of the regionals? What that, like, I mean, does that make us better or worse off? How much do we treat the handful of games over one weekend versus the whole season? I don't know. I honestly don't. It's easy to say that. Like, all of Ole Miss wanted to fire their coach last year, and they squeaked in and they won the championship. And you know what? They stunk again this year, and they want to fire him again because actually their regular season sample size was more representative of their team, and they got hot and somehow won the championship, and they actually were not even good.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's baseball. I don't have a good solution to this because I don't know how to fix what happened, to be honest.
Well, I think he was asking
okay.
Louis or Louise Allen, what your solution would be.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. With the reason, we need to attack the portal like LSU. Yeah, I think they will, but you even saw LSU attack the portal, and they still struggled a little bit, right? They were one of the best teams in the country, and then they kind of tapered off a little bit, and now they struggled in the regional. I think they probably made it through, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, and I think they got through today. But again,
it's tough, man. It's tough to win 56. When you play a 50-60 win. A 50-60 game season, it's tough to win a lot of games.
Right.
And Miami went 42-21 this year. They won they won 2/3 of their games, but almost, basically, right? Yeah, basically. That's big. That's hard to do.
Again, I think the way I evaluate this is the neutral committee looked at them and said, this is the 9th best team in the country. And I will say this, if you looked at our pitching, it's a freaking miracle.
That's not the 9th best team in the country.
Yeah, and you start, and I think it's probably a good place to end. Jazz and I, we follow these kids through, frankly, the fall to the beginning of the season. We were out there, at the opening series watching these kids play.
I was at fall practices.
Yeah, so. Jazz went out to fall practices. We were in the press box for like Dartmouth and stuff. And, for us to watch 2 kids who we saw struggle really badly early in the year kind of rehabilitate and then be a core component with pulling this team back up to the point they were the number 9 team in the country, to see them, frankly, implode on the mound there and lose the season essentially by giving up 9 runs in 1 innings. That's just painful for us to watch. And for everyone to immediately jump to fire the coach. Like, frankly, I don't give a crap. I feel for those kids, and it sucks. And, hopefully next year we don't have that happen. But in the moment, those were the guys that got us there. And those are the guys we relied on. And we put them in there in the same situation that they got the job done against Wake Forest, the number 1 team in the country, the previous week. And you know what? It didn't happen. And it sucks. And there wasn't a decision to be made there. There was not a decision to be made there. It was 100% going to be Gallo in that game. And when he got into trouble, if he got into trouble, or if not, because he was going to go 3 innings anyway, it was going to be Lecarica. Because those are the kids that had gotten it done to get us to that point. And you know what? They didn't get it done. And it sucks.
And you got to go with what you got. You got to go with what you got. What else are you going to do?
And it sucks. And it sucks for them. And rather than like being angry at the coach, I just feel bad for them. And that especially, I think we'll have to confirm if Lecarica has the COVID year or not, but that might have been his last, his last college performance was giving up a grand slam. And I don't know. I think there's a human element here where you feel for the kids versus just showing up with pitchforks and saying, we got to fire the coach because we didn't like the result. We don't know exactly what he did wrong, but he's still got to be fired. And I think that's where I struggle. If someone could come to me and say, these are 5 things that a high quality manager does that Gino does not know how to do, and that's why we're not getting out of regionals, I'll listen. No one can even give me a specificity.
No one threw a name at us either, by the way.
Well, We know. Good thing, because I wouldn't have known who the guy was. But
I'm just saying. I mean, not only that. Look, unfortunately, there's a business aspect to it as well.
right.
And the name Damari holds a ton of weight.
Well, I think that's actually a curse for him at this point, because I don't think anyone would be advocating to fire a manager that didn't have the chill with this, you grown ass motherfucker. That was the well, that's what I have to say about that. We can treat humans as humans, and if you don't feel bad for someone that worked their butt off since they were in Little League to get to a certain point and have it implode in their face, then I don't know what to tell you. So I don't think there's anything wrong with showing a little humanity.
That person has never played competitive baseball or competitive anything for that matter to understand how that feels.
Yeah, I mean, these are they.
I can speak from experience. I know exactly how that feels to lose a big game and to win a big game. And there's definitely a human element to it. And
and again, this is for a lot of some of these people like Yo-Yo have a bright future.
Grown. They're not grown, by the way. They're not grown. They're 18, 19, and 20-year-old kids. That's not grown.
Trust us, we're sitting next to Jackson Carver and Emory Williams. They do not look grown.
They look like they're 12 years old, and that's not a knock on them. But
yeah, it's just like these are kids. They haven't experienced a lot, and also, sports is such a cruel profession, because like people like us, like we're starting our career when a lot of theirs are ending, and these are things that like they've known since Little League, that they this is what they wanted to do, and they get to this huge moment. And it goes about as bad as it could possibly go. If you don't have any sympathy at all at that point, like you just don't have feelings. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like, so I mean, that was what I was thinking at the time. Watching like Eureka, who had stepped up and pitched so many big spots for us down at the end. When that ball's sailing over the fence, I'm not thinking about Gino, to be honest. Yeah. And I still don't see a solution other than, we got to play better in the postseason next year. And unfortunately, we have to wait an entire year for that opportunity to show up. So, but I guess, one thing in his defense is we know it's going to show up. We're going to be in regionals next year. And you know what? We can't, we can't. All right. I don't know if I can, Jazz. I don't think I have the power to undo a ban. I got mad.
There you go, Poke. There you go, Poke. There you go. It's gut wrenching, man.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to fire the coach and come up with some whatever solution, that's fine. But if you're gonna come, maybe I overreacted with the straight ban, but instead of putting him in a timeout. But if you're gonna come in here and say, forget them, like don't have sympathy for the kids, that's just not gonna fly in the show. So I'm fine making an executive decision on that.
By the way, TBB, that's not a bad hire if you think about it. Georgia hired the LSU pitching coach because they didn't want. I don't know if they didn't want to spend top dollar. That's not a bad hire. It's the LSU pitching coach. You're talking about an SEC team that is one of the top teams in the country year in and year out. I think that's a bad hire. So, but I get what you're saying.
Right, but it's also.
Vish, can we stop this damn show already? My goodness,
I'm not ready for football recruiting for the next 3 months. But anyway, yeah, we could. Yes, we can end the show. I guess just to wrap up then. I mean, I think we're back here next year in regional, and we're gonna you and I think we've sucked Melissa into our vortex. We'll be following from the first game to the last game, but I encourage people, and I know the people in the chat now I've interacted with on Twitter throughout the season, so we're not talking really about necessarily them. But if you want to fire the coach in May, in June, you got to watch the team in February, right, and understand how they got where they are, and not just say, "Oh, we lost. This is unacceptable. Fire everyone." Right. And that's all I would say on that. And encourage. So we're gonna this version of Six Ring Canes is going on a little hiatus now.
Well, we'll be back with some football next week.
Yeah. Football. We obviously do football year round
next week, actually, because there's a lot of recruits, a lot of visitors coming in next week. This week there was quite a few as well. They had a camp, so we'll talk about that next week. But make sure you guys keep it locked and watch Buckets on Wednesday.
Yes, buckets at 9 o'clock on Wednesday. We do have a really good guest lined up, but for this show, I would encourage everyone when the season rolls around. If you kind of just turned on in May, join us. Come with us on this journey next year, and I think your perspective will be a little bit different.
It's fun. We appreciate all the baseball heads out there watching the show as well. So Polk and TBB and even Mr. and Mrs. Allen, who we banned, who we kicked out for.
I don't. You know what? I can't.
They can probably still watch it, just can't comment, right?
They can watch it, and
we still love you anyways.
I'm assuming my Twitter mentions are probably getting abused right now, but
Kyle, the rest of the folks.
Yeah, no, thanks everyone for kind of sticking with us. We kind of started in the middle of the season with this show, but we're gonna start before the season, do preseason stuff and all that. Actually, coming out of fall ball, when we get an idea, we'll probably do a one-off.
Yeah,
as they kind of, Gino generally talks about some of the players and all that. We can kind of, get a sense of where the program is. Well, at that point, we'll obviously know who's here and who's not. But yeah, definitely stay tuned for this show every week at this time. We're gonna get back to football next week and buckets Wednesday. And yeah, next year we'll be back with much more baseball all season long versus the back half of the season.
In the meantime, adios. Oh, and it's always all about the U. Go Canes. We'll see you guys.
Go Canes.
The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show. You know.